Right, guys, from chilly Bulgaria, it was minus 11 last night. Minus 11, right behind that door. Anyway, I managed to keep the log burner going throughout the night. Um, just by chance, I just woke up and there was enough embers. I did have to use a firelighter on one of the reburns, but like if you set the vent, it burns a bit slower. And like this morning, the last time I built it was about 5:30, and even just now, about 9 o'clock, there was still plenty of embers. So it's roaring away again now. So we're all cozy. I've got the electric blanket, and I've kept the one bar on the fire. Pushed the boat out a little bit in this extreme weather. Now it used to get down to, like, I think I've known it in the last house I was in, and that was colder than this house. And I used to have, when it was really, really, really cold, I used to have to put a couple of electric fires round the clock, and you get a bigger electric bill, but my electric bills in the summer are negligible to nothing. And I've thought about snowbirding, i.e., going somewhere for like maybe January, February, but these cold nights are few and far between. Even and now, they're not as cold. Like I think the lowest I ever recorded over there was minus 28, and that was cold. And but I wasn't cold. I was wrapped up and everything. And usually you get the clear skies when it's that cold, so the sun's out. And I noticed yesterday I drove past a couple of dogs there, and they were basking in the sunshine. And the temperature was about -1, -2, but in the sunshine, you get a little thing on the weather, don't you? Feels like, and it probably felt like 8, 10 in the sun. So it's not as bad as, like, weather I've experienced in the UK. Like probably the coldest was um, in Dundee, when you get the Norwegian wind coming down, and it's the wind chill. That's what that gets to your bones. And I got a what's his name there. I bought a suit that from the oil rigs, and it was fantastic. It was absolutely, because you get no drafts, and all the heat is trapped inside. And if you got the proper layers on, and that, it's fantastic. You can't wear too much because you get too hot and you can't move around if you put too much on. And I wore that the whole winter there. Um, that was in Dundee, and it was cold, and nothing. This is nothing. I mean, when I went out yesterday, I just went out in my fleece. In this fleece, I didn't put a coat on because I was in the car. I had a coat in the car. I always carry a coat in case, you never know. If you end up in a ditch or something like that, it's an idea to have a coat to walk home in, or to wait for the rescue, or if you break down. And I bought a mocha pot yesterday, and a mocha pot is an Italian contraption to make coffee, and it's like a kettle, and it's screwed in the middle. I'll show you it one day. It's over there, but I've got my laptop on my lap at the moment, charging this camera up, so I can't move. So yeah, I bought a mocha pot, and I bought some coffee from this, like, it's like the Bulgarian version of Superdrug, but they sell all this health food stuff, and they've got tons of gear. And I got some apple cider vinegar as well, from the drugstore. And they've got almost one side of the shop is all these. They got all the muesli and all that, if you call that health food. I don't think grains are very healthy in any shape or form, to be honest with you. I haven't done the research, and it's just what I believe. And so yeah, and I bought the 2 coffees. I was recommended to go there by my partner in digital asset crime, and he told me, and if he tells you something's cheap, it's cheap. He says, well, probably as bad as me. And he's got all these things that he knows about. And so if you mention something, he'll know where the cheapest, best. And this isn't the cheapest, nastiest coffee. It's pretty good. It's what did he call it? Arabic, something like that. So I'm now a coffee barista, and because the coffee, I mentioned I'd probably give up coffee because the price now of the instant coffee, and I'm not so sure what they put in it anymore. Like any food that's processed, you've got to be careful with it. I mean, what they put in it and what they fill it out with. There's probably a lot of the fillers in this coffee, and they may even put, some other plant type stuff in there. You can make coffee with dandelion roots. I'd probably be a bit more expensive actually, but there's one called Camp Coffee, and I don't know whether they can call it Camp anymore. But when we were kids, it was Camp Coffee, and it wasn't cocoa beans, coffee beans. It was a root of, I think that might have been, was it dandelion or some type of plant? Probably better for you. Camp Coffee. I think you can still get it if it's still called Camp Coffee. Anyway, that was in the olden days. But these kettles, they screw together in the middle, and you put water in the bottom, and then you just put it on the gas burner or whatever burner. And some of them don't work on induction hobs because some of them are made out of aluminium, but you can get stainless steel ones, and you put the coffee in the middle, and it just percolates through the steam. It's airtight in the bottom. It's got like a pressure release valve on it, like a pressure cooker, so it doesn't blow up. And then just the steam goes through the coffee, and then you get your cup of coffee out at the top. But I got the medium size one, and they're only it was about £9, but I'll get my money back on that very quickly. Compared with if you compare the price of it's 100 grams is now around about 12 lev in the shop, which is just under £6 for 100 grams of instant coffee. Now this stuff is 15 lev, which is only just a bit more expensive for 500 grams. Do the maths, but you have to use a little bit more. It's like 3 teaspoons in this one, but it's looser. It's like loose ground coffee. So I'll have to, and it's proper coffee then. Instant coffee compared with proper coffee, night and day. So that's what I got yesterday. It's another piece to the jigsaw. I mean, how many pieces So I'm almost a proper like Italian Eastern European now. I thought they actually make them here. The one I bought. So they're pretty well established in Eastern Europe. I thought they were Eastern European, but they're not. It's Italian. Mocha pot. Look it up if you want to know really what it looks like in that. Probably a lot of people have got them now in the UK. The UK is like more of a coffee culture now than it was when I was a kid. We only had tea. Very rare. We had coffee. I think that was to do with the cost, and we're just not far after the war, Second World War, which the Russians were on our side. Not many people know that either, because they've kind of over time they've deleted them. It's like what did they call it? The Mandela effect, where things change over time. And a lot of people don't know the actual magnitude of the involvement of the Russians in the Second World War. And they have the Victory Day. They call it the Great Something War. And they have Victory Day. And a lot more Russians got killed than anyone else. I think it was 20 million. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of ammo. And we were lucky. The UK was lucky because the Germans went that way. And they postponed. They were going to invade the UK, and they postponed it. They had all these barges and everything ready. And they postponed it and went to Russia. And then they kind of overstretched their supply lines and ended up coming to grief in Stalingrad, where they got whooped. But it was a long battle, and in the end, they just kind of wore themselves out. In the end, the Germans, and the weather played a big part. And then the reinforcements came from the Siberian guys, came over, and then that was it. Game over. And they made all the Germans walk back to Germany through all the towns and that, where they'd pillaged everyone. And not many of them made the walk back because they were already exhausted, obviously. And I don't think they were going to bust them back. The Russians, I don't think and there was too many of them to probably to look after. So they just said, well, Germany's that way, and that was it. But yeah, it played a big part in the Second World War. Now, I get a lot of comments actually say you look cold in a scarf because you got a scarf on, but that's a little bit counterintuitive, because the reason why you wear a scarf is to keep warm, is to be warm. And if you keep this area warm where the scarf is, you've got on the top of your head, that's where a lot of heat will come out as well. Then you're on the way to keeping warm. And one thing I would say to people who think I'm cold is that I'm warm, and I've said it quite a few times on here, and they say you're freezing to death and all this, and it's the furthest thing from the truth, because it's about -9 outside now, and I'm toasty warm. When I go out, I don't put a coat on, and that's one of the reasons. And I'm kind of been working outside all my life, and I'm an expert at keeping warm. I will say that. So anyone who thinks I'm cold, I'll say it again now. The reason why I've got a scarf on indoors is to keep warm. And I like the feeling, actually. It's like a comfort thing as well. I like it. It's like snug, being snug as a bug in a rug. And a tip I would say for a lot of people, especially with central heating and stuff like that, and in Bulgaria they have these places blazing hot. Now, if you go in and out, that's when people get ill, because your body doesn't know whether it's spring, summer, winter, because it's artificial heat. And that's another thing. I haven't had a cold. The last cold I had, and that was probably one of the reasons, because it was in and out, and it was a very harsh winter and damp, and it was horrible. And in 2020, January, I had a head cold, just before the lockups, and actually that job got suspended, because I was half on my way here anyway for a short break. I was just going to come for a short break because I'd done the winter there, that winter. And I was going to have a longer break afterwards. But I thought, well, if this gets suspended, it was nearly finished anyway, what we were doing. And we had a break coming up anyway from this contract, because they had to do a lot more enabling works, as you would call them. They were doing ground stabilisation. And we caught them up. So there was two reasons we pulled off, or got shooed off, and that was because the weather, the site was like, you couldn't do anything, and you can't do ground stabilisation in wet weather. You've just got to stop dead, because if you run machinery on clay which you're trying to stabilise, you'll never stabilise. It just turns to slurry, and then it's game over. At least for a year or two while it dries out. Slurry is almost impossible to deal with once you churn a site up. So you stop, and even if you're digging foundations, and that's a good idea to stop and or run on stone, put some stone down properly. Anyway, that's another story. So yeah, I haven't had a cold. I haven't had a cold since 2020, and I haven't had any medicine either to prevent it. So there is a thing. So I must be doing something right, because I don't do everything right. I do other things that you shouldn't be doing. Anyway, so the reason why I don't get many colds in that is because I keep the temperature, and I used to keep my office. Now, I was sharing an office on that job, I remember, and they used to have it baking hot, and that was probably the reason why I got a cold. And the guy who was in the office had a cold all year round. He was ill all year round with one thing or another. He had a permanent cough. Well, he smoked as well, he had a permanent, but he was visibly ill all year round, and he was grossly overweight. Anyway, maybe other things, don't know. But he was always ill, always. So I had a head cold there, and it was probably going in and out of this office. Usually I have my own office, and I generally don't even have the heating on in there, unless you're cabined up, because it's raining all day or whatever. But I usually have the door open as well on the site, even in the winter, and you can dry your stuff off at night. But it's not a good idea to go in hot, cold. Anyway, so going back to the keeping warm, I'm an expert at keeping warm. By the way I dress, and the temperature kind of keep the place where I'm either working or living. And when I go out in the car, the most I put it on is 19. That's my limit in a car, winter or summer. Because if you go in a hot car, it's the same thing. And your body knows when to detox. It's like it's opposite to the germ theory, if you look that up, but which I learnt about over the last 5 years or so. And it's like when the leaves all fall off the trees at the same time, even if they're like 10, 20 miles apart. That type of tree at the same elevation and conditions, the leaves will fall off the tree. Now that doesn't mean the tree's catching it off someone, catching something off another tree. That means that the environment and the resonances and everything's right. And you find that, like, in valleys, it'll happen days apart as you go up a valley. And the same in the spring when the flowers come out and the buds, they'll come out sequentially up the valley, and they're not catching anything off each other. They're just reaching the resonance where the natural things. So like, if you look at trees shedding leaves as detoxing, as we do with the mucus and all the rest of it, have a clean out. That's the theory that I believe, and it kind of comes into this keeping warm and cold. And if you go in warm and cold all the time, a lot of people have permanent type of colds by doing that. And central heating, I think, is a terrible thing, because that does another thing as well. That dehydrates you, and it can cause mites and all that kind of stuff. Whereas a wood burner, it kind of keeps the circulation going. And I sit in the middle of the room here. Don't know whether you've noticed. I'm in the middle of the whole space, right in the middle. Because if you sit by doors or windows, or too close to the heat source, they call it hogging the fire, then you can get the same effects. Then you're sitting in a draft or whatever. So I sit right in the middle here, and I also have one bar on the fire when it's cold, or when it's freezing like now. I have one bar here because the fire's over there, so it causes convection, and you can feel the cold air coming across this way. But if you put the fire the other side, on this side, which is where it is, then the convection, it stops it. It stops that convection coming across the middle of the room. So it's all scientific. And getting wrapped up is better, a lot better than having a blazing hot room, in my opinion. And I'm living proof, because I haven't had a cold for 5 years. Right? So, and if I do get like detoxing, it happens just in one day, generally. It's not cold like symptoms, it's just detoxing in one day, or generally, if it's a bit cold at night, I'll have a bit of a detox in the and if you get a sweat up, that's also good for detoxing and so these are just my little theories, but it works for me anyway. It works for me. And for anyone who's kind of, I don't know whether they're concerned or they're just like, or they just genuinely think I'm cold. But like I can assure anyone, I'm never cold as such. You're cold, obviously, when you go outside. It's cooler. And I stay outside a little bit longer than I should. Because when you come back in, and if you're wearing the same gear, when you come back in, your circulation goes. Because people always used to say, why are your hands always warm? Because I know there's a period where you keep them outside. And then if you've ever made snowballs with your bare hands, you'll know what I'm talking about, because your hands burn afterwards, and your face as well. If you're out in harsh winds, they can really burn you. And when you go inside, because all your blood vessels go to your skin as a natural reaction, keep you warm. That's why people like diving into freezing cold water, which I've never done that. I don't think I'd like that. I've dove into cold water, but not icy water. I think that's maybe a bit too much of a shock. But anyway, so that's maybe a tip for someone. I mean, I could take this scarf off now, and it wouldn't be cold for me. So I'll just kind of repeat those things again. That like, you know. And yesterday I was out and about, and it was like -3, -2, -3, -4, generally around and about. And I was in and out of shops, see, so that's why I don't wear a coat. And the car, I keep it 19. And I even open the window if the sun's blazing in, and you get, you know. That's another thing I've done to the car. Anything -6 and below, it's a good idea to put your car on charge, which mine's on charge now. -11's, it's kind of a must. It's a must, and it's going to be -10 tonight. So I'll just leave it on now. I'll leave it charging up, and that gives it enough. And it's got like a trickle charge, especially for overnight charging. At this charger, so it doesn't cook the battery. So it's really a good feature. And if you get one with the little, it's got like an icicle, and that's the setting you want to put it on. And it stops charging. It says full on the dial when it's full, and it stops charging. So it's not cooking anything on the car. So they're really good these days, these little chargers. And it's only a tiny thing. So that's how I was set up and the sun's out now. And I could go out in the sun now and sit outside, which I may well do. And it's -6 now. And I can go and have a cup of coffee outside, made with the mocha pot. But you don't want too many of these coffees. You get to your nervous system. This is proper coffee now. You'll end up shaking. It gets to you straight to the nervous system. Anyway, so that's keeping warm. And another thing is good bedding, which I've mentioned before. And I do have an electric blanket just as a booster. And these things, that's really good. You know, if you're getting a bit, if it's really getting cold at night, which I'm not in the bed, I'm not cold at all. But you can just get it coming, you know. And that happens about 7 in the morning. And just turn the electric blanket on for a bit, and that gets the toast factor back up. And so I would say in this room now, it's like -6 outside. I say in this room now, it's probably, I'd say 20, 21. I've never really measured it, but I would say that's about 20, 21 in here now. And I wouldn't have it any hotter than that. People have it 25, 26. And that's when you start getting dehydrated and you're cold when you go out. Then people are always like this, and when you know they've been inside and in a really hot place, and then you go outside, and you become what we used to call nesh. You become nesh. When you go out, you're not tough. You're not toughened up properly, and if you dress, and a lot of it's in here as well, because people walk around like this, especially I don't want to be arrested for being sexist, but like women, they know how to look cold when they go out, and they always cross their arms like this, and they look really, really, they do look cold, and they are. And maybe that's why people say I look cold, but I haven't got me yet. I'm not like that. And they look really cold, and they go like that and hunch up, and they go from one door to another, say about 50 yards, and they look as though they're freezing to death. But anyway, and it's all to do with, people say, layers and all that, and we used to go for extra punishment. We used to go in the winter up the Welsh mountains, and my mate used to say, he said, it's the forecast? He said, oh, it's not bad enough. Might give it a miss this week. The weather's not bad enough. And it was bleak up there, the top of it. We've done a few winter walks up there. I remember, was it Carned Llewellyn? The Carned down, where they have wild ponies up there, all covered in moss. These ponies, I think they were pit ponies and they just got abandoned there. And they've survived. There's wild ponies all over the Welsh mountains. On the Carnadow. And we were up Carned Llewellyn one day. And we got to the top, and you couldn't stand up. And we just were trying to find this. There's a bothy up there. I forget what they call them now in Wales. That's what they call them in Scotland, bothy. A little shelter. And we couldn't see it. We were just blinded by all this driving snow. So we had to turn around, get out of Dodge, get out of there. And it was all right then on the leeward side. But we went back up there in the summer, and we weren't far from this shelter on that day, but we never would have found it. You couldn't see where you were going. And you can see how people get in trouble up on these places. Big trouble. People die up there regularly. In the Welsh mountains, regularly. There's a mountain called Tryfan, and that's statistically the most dangerous mountain in the UK, Tryfan. I haven't been up there in the winter, but you can see why, because a lot of it's, if you slip, game over. And even Snowdon, people there's a route up there, up a ridge, and if you go the wrong way on that, you can get into serious trouble. Well, people die regularly. Okay, enough rambling. Cheers.